Hello everyone, welcome to From the Star Wars Home Video Library. I'm your host Nathan B. Butler, author of A Saga on Home Video, and this time we're taking a look at a documentary, a professionally made documentary here, that is focusing on what is sort of a glaring hole for many of us who are Star Wars home video collectors. Probably one of the most well-known things within Star Wars home video collecting is that if you want to get yourself a copy of the 1978 Star Wars Holiday Special, you will not be able to legitimately. There isn't one. There is no legitimate release of that. It aired on television and that was it. But in the years since, in the decades since, bootlegs have proliferated online, in VHS formats at conventions, and in any other format you can probably imagine at this point that is still relevant for people to be able to watch this travesty from 1978. What is lesser known, but I think probably at this point fairly well known, is that you can actually stream the cartoon from the holiday special with kind of a new title card added to it over on Disney+. Of course, even before that, you can watch the cartoon part on home media because it was on the original trilogy bonus disc of the complete saga. So you could watch it on the 2011 set, the 2015 reissue, the 2017 Walmart exclusive holiday reissue as the 6-movie collection. And again, you could see it on the Blu-ray bonus disc for The Empire Strikes Back when it got an individual bonus disc with those later 4K releases. In the US, it was just with the 4K Ultimate Edition releases of the Skywalker Saga box set. Other regions got their black border releases on Blu-ray with the bonus disc in 2020. You could see it on those bonus discs as well because it's the same disc, but not in the US because of the whole screwy situation with the black border releases that we won't get into because it was enough of a mess that we've spent way too much time on it already. Suffice to say, the cartoon is out there. The cartoon actually inspired a lot of things from The Mandalorian. But the cartoon is really seemingly the only thing that Lucasfilm cares to put out into the wild because of just how bad the rest of it was. Because it was not a Star Wars show per se. It was, but it wasn't a Star Wars story being told in the Star Wars vein, in the vein of what we would see in the movies or anything like that, or even later TV shows. It was basically a variety show, which was a big thing in the 1970s. Thank goodness it's not now, but now we have reality television, so, you know, you pick your evils, I suppose. But at the time, variety shows were huge. Donnie and Marie, stuff like that. Richard Pryor had a variety show that even had a Star Wars Cantina segment on it. Donnie and Marie had a Star Wars segment on it. But in trying to keep interest for Star Wars in the public eye, heading into a holiday season when toys and stuff would finally be available after not really having them available for that initial Christmas time and whatnot, after the initial theatrical release of Star Wars, one of the ways of trying to keep that attention was the Star Wars Holiday Special. And there's been sort of this mystique added to it, to the fact that in a conversation with Steve Sansweet, there was at one point when George Lucas talked about wanting to take a hammer to or destroy all copies if he could. He hated it that much. And that sort of entered the zeitgeist out there, and it became this kind of weird thing. The one big Star Wars production of that era that you just couldn't get legally. There was no way to watch it officially. If you wanted to get it, you'd have to get a bootleg on some format, or these days, watch it online. What is so bad about it, and how did it happen? Well, that is the story that is documented in the documentary, A Disturbance in the Force, how the Star Wars Holiday Special happened. Not how it was made, how it happened. Like, it was just this train wreck of a tragic thing. Wow, how on earth did that happen? It's a documentary that is available in 2 different formats. We're going to look at both here. This is probably the way most people are going to wind up seeing it if they don't just stream it digitally. So, we have the Blu-ray release here, a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, but of course covered up by our presenter from what is usually referred to as the Wookiee softcore porn VR scene. You'd have to see it to understand it, but you'll be scarred. Various different characters from it here, like Boba Fett and so on, B. Arthur's character here and so on. A Disturbance in the Force, how the Star Wars Holiday Special happened. I do like that they have sort of a, you can't see it on here, but they have sort of a pattern to it, so it's not just like straight blue. It kind of looks like the scan lines of a television. And then on the spine here, you've got a smaller version of that front image of Disturbance in the Force, giant films, and then Blu-ray disc. Giant pictures. Can't see it on there. And then the back, which I'll read, we got images to go along with some of the stuff that we see in there. Images of some of the people that they talk to and interview, cast crew information, giant pictures, the copyright, your stats, and whatnot here. 91 minutes, by the way. Blu-ray disc, region A and B, but not C listed on here. Blu-ray disc not rated, copyright information. I'll read that back here in just a moment. It is important to note, for those for whom this matters, here is our disc. Same art, a Disturbance in the Force, no subtitle here. Giant pictures, Blu-ray disc, aspect ratio 1.78 by 1, not rated, A and B regions, a little bit of copyright here. So this is a print-on-demand disc. I believe they are using Amazon's publishing, the same thing I used with Kindle Direct Publishing for A Saga on Home Video 2nd edition a while back, which means that this Blu-ray is a BDR. It is a Blu-ray recordable disc. It is not one of those mass-produced regular Blu-ray discs. For some, that will make a huge difference. For others, it will not. For me, I don't really care. That said, I did not put that disc in my PS5 to play it. I played it on the computer and in a regular Blu-ray player. So this is the documentary. It does have a trailer for the documentary on it, but then just the documentary itself. And you can tell by some of the people who are shown here on the back, pretty eclectic group that they interviewed. Kevin Smith, Donny Osmond, Seth Green, Weird Al Yankovic, and of course tons of people who are involved in the actual production itself. You don't have major Star Wars actors being interviewed for it. You wouldn't surprisingly don't have like Lucas or Kathleen Kennedy or anyone like that talking about it in here. But it's a really detailed story of why the idea was pitched in the first place, what format it was meant to take, how it changed creative hands at different points, what they thought about it at the time, and I think more interestingly, how it fits into the context of variety television of the time to understand just why it is what it is and why it's a type of program that makes very little sense logically in terms of why would you make something like this to a modern audience, because variety shows just aren't really a thing for us at this point. Particularly interesting for me with this is that Seth Green, who of course was behind Robot Chicken, and Seth Green of course did the did those Robot Chicken Star Wars specials with his team and whatnot. But you may recall that Seth Green was actually behind, with his team, behind that Star Wars show that Disney basically axed, called Star Wars Detours. That was supposed to be a parody take on Star Wars. Kind of a cross between like Robot Chicken with Star Wars and kind of like what Lower Decks is doing so successfully, so very, very well with Star Trek right now. Kind of combine those together to have an ongoing animated series that is basically a Star Wars spoof type thing. But it's interesting because he talks about, like talking with George Lucas about the concept behind Detours and how the conversation sometimes came around to the holiday special when they tried to do something of a different vein with Star Wars and the lasting impression that made, which kind of made me kind of surprised that Detours was even greenlit in the first place, or Robot Chicken, or the Family Guy specials, and so on. So kind of an interesting thing insight-wise. So you can watch it on there. It's a very good documentary. I very much recommend it to anyone who is at all curious about the Star Wars Holiday Special. It is a fantastic documentary. If you can't watch it on Blu-ray or digital, there is a DVD version. It seems to take longer to print and actually ship, though. Similar setup here to the front. Again, I will be reading the back. Don't worry. I just haven't yet because it's the same back on each one. We have our spine here, that image again, a Disturbance in the Force, giant pictures, in this case, DVD video. Down here it says DVD video disc DVD-R format, to be clear on there. And a similar back here as far as the layout goes, just with the information for DVD, of course, instead of Blu-ray there. And then, again, as it noted there on the spine, you do have a similar layout here. It just happens to show Region 1 and Region 2 instead of A and B. It does have the DVD symbol there. It does note that it's NTSC and so on here, but it is a DVD-R, not a regular mass-produced DVD. Same thing though, trailer and documentary. As to what it says and how it describes itself. In 1978, CBS aired the Star Wars Holiday Special the week before Thanksgiving to an audience of 13 million people. Considered one of the worst shows in television history, it aired only once. George Lucas tried to bury it, and an infamous camp legend was born. This documentary unravels the mysteries behind the most bizarre Star Wars spin-off of all time. So it's a great documentary, very interesting stuff about the Star Wars Holiday Special, how it was made cool to see people involved in TV at the time and involved in that special, and the context of those who have worked with Lucas or who have looked in from the outside on this. Good stuff, 90 minutes of solid, good documentary. That said, In print, you will get more information and more detail and more context than you would in just trying to cram all this into a 90-minute documentary. So I would recommend also A Disturbance in the Force, How and Why, as opposed to just How the Star Wars Holiday Special happened, by Steve, I believe it's Kozak there, released around the same time here. So you can get sort of a written version of this history, and then you can get the sort of condensed video version of that history. Both of them work very well to tell this story. I find that the added context, for me, context is king. That's why A Saga on Home Video is a narrative history of Star Wars on home video. It's not just a freaking product guide, because to me, context is what makes things interesting. And certainly there's way more context provided for behind-the-scenes stuff in the book version of this rather than watching the home video version. But the home video version is finally out. We've been waiting for this to finally get released for a very long time. Finally did come out here in late 2023. It is print on demand, so your mileage will vary on your interest in these particular discs themselves. But if you're looking for it out there, you can get it on Blu-ray and DVD separately to learn about how that train wreck took place, or hover train wreck, I guess, in this case, maglev type wreck took place. It's a doozy, but it might give you a different perspective when you sit down and go online or pick up an old bootleg copy you might have lying around of the holiday special to give it another, hopefully marginally entertaining watch, knowing the behind-the-scenes knowledge here. With that, we'll wrap up this episode. Thank you for watching, and may the Force be with the home video viewers.